All right, you guys, we are in for a treat today on the Fiercest Lions podcast. We have Kevin Smith, the owner, founder, and trainer at Terminator Training. And we are going to be talking all things fitness and military selection. So I'm pumped. I've got a ton of questions for you, brother. And I'm excited to dig into all this with you. So welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me. Looking forward to it as well.
Let's jump right in. I would love to hear a little bit about, let's kind of hear your bio. So I know a little bit about you from social media. That's where a lot of people are following you right now. But let's dig into, just jump right in. Let's talk about your military service, and then we'll go backwards in time a little bit and hear about the Kevin from back in the day. So share about your military experience a little bit with us, brother.
Yeah, so I actually just got out about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, after 12 years in. I came into the Army in 2011 as an 18 X-ray. And for those who are not familiar with that, is basically a contract that allows you to go from civilian to actually get a chance to try out for Army Special Forces, also known as Green Berets. And although the selection rate is not great for that, and statistically, it's not a high chance probability that you're going to make it. I was lucky enough to make it all the way through. I went to selection in 2012. After basic training and airborne school, you pretty much get sent to a selection prep course, then selection. Was successful and went to the Q course. I became an 18 Delta. So for those not aware, 18 Delta is a Special Forces medic. There are 4 MOSs on an SF team. 18 Delta is one of them. And you have the longest stint out of anyone in the Q course if you're an 18 Delta. So I was in the Q course for almost 3 years, about 2.5 years. And I went straight through. That was no recycling or anything like that. It's just how long it takes because you go through an extra 10 months of training over every other MOS. So finished that, went to 10th Special Forces Group, which was located in Fort Carson, Colorado. There are 3 out of their 4 battalions are in Fort Carson. There are other ones in Germany. I ended up going to Carson. That ended up being my first choice. So I lucked out and got sent there. And living in Colorado, needless to say, is a great spot. Spent about 4 years there. I went to on a couple deployments, one to Africa, a couple to Europe. Basically, when I first got there, we still had the Africa area of operations. And then we switched with third group, another SF group, and took over the Europe kind of area of operations. So I did a couple trips to Europe, Eastern Europe, nothing super special, but some pretty cool spots. And we had some pretty cool stops in between. I then in 2018, after about 4 years in 10th group, ended up going to Delta selection, and I actually made it through Delta selection. That was in spring of 2018, and PCS'd. I don't know if you guys call it PCS in the Navy, but you just basically change stations to Fort Bragg to go through their operators training course. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful there. Out of respect for the unit, I don't really like to talk too much about the details on that, but
Hmm.
was unsuccessful, got dropped, and was lucky enough that my wife had just gotten a job here in North Carolina, is where I live right now.
Hmm.
And so I didn't want to go back to 10th group. Typically, you go back to the group that you're coming from, but I kind of did a little bargain with them and said, hey, is there any way I can stay at Fort Bragg? Was pretty easy. I ended up staying at Fort Bragg. I got sent to third group and finished out my career there. While I was at third group, I did another trip to Africa, and then I did one trip to Afghanistan in 2020, right after COVID started. So that was pretty interesting. And yeah, I was an 18 Delta for about 90% of my career. And before I had ended up starting to think about getting out, because I got out obviously after 12 years, which is well before retirement.
Right.
I thought I was going to potentially stay in. So as a career progression thing, I went to the 18 Fox course, which is a course that you can go to if you're already in SF for a while, more experienced, you can go to the 18 Fox course to become an intelligence sergeant. So I did that about a year before I got out. And unfortunately, I didn't get really to spend a ton of time doing that, but got out last April and have been coaching fitness and helping guys prepare for selection. And I also coach some non-selection prep guys as well for the last year or so. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I love it. That's, they got a lot of experience right there. That's a lot. I know that's 3 minutes, but that's a lot of training. I know about that 18 Delta course. Like that is no joke. So tell me about rewind. Let's go back to the beginning days of Kevin and thinking about becoming an SF operator and what that looked like. So we'll talk about a little bit more on mindset and all that. But initially, what drove you towards this? I mean, did you feel like this is the only thing you can think about? You just want to join the military and you just kind of happened to go down this path? Or was this something you felt was a drive and calling of yours?
That is a good question. So we'll rewind back to, I guess, high school. When I was in high school, I was big time into sports. I played football, basketball, and baseball. Was pretty good. I grew up in Maine, so good is relative. I wasn't good enough to go play like Division 1 or anything like that, but I was a pretty good player for Maine. And the school that I went to when I graduated, pretty much the school I went to, almost everyone in that school, it was just the thing to do to go to
Mhm.
college. And a lot of people, I grew up in a pretty wealthy town. My family wasn't super wealthy, but there were some wealthy people around me. So like very, very like high stakes people that were like, super competitive with getting into good colleges and stuff like that. Parents would brag about where their kids were going to college and all that. And I was not someone that applied myself all that well in school. So I was like a B student, and I mean, I could have been an A student had I tried harder. I just didn't really have enough interest to do it. So I just kind of
Mhm.
got by with B's. So needless to say, I didn't have like a lot of, more prestigious school options. So I ended up going to the University of New Hampshire, which is state school, obviously, about an hour from where I grew up. I had a couple friends going there, so I kind of just honestly, the reason I went there is just because everyone else was doing it. I didn't really
Mhm.
think twice of it. It was like everyone's
Yeah.
going to college. I got buddies going to UNH, and that's what I'm going to do too, even if I don't feel like I'm ready for it. And turns
Mhm.
out I was not ready for it. So I showed up and probably made it through about a month before I was just like, I wasn't gelling with the whole college lifestyle. I wasn't gelling
Yeah.
with I felt like I was like just different than most of the kids there, most of the students there,
Mhm.
both studies wise and college wise. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but also like socially, I just didn't really fit in. I would go out and party, but I didn't really like get much out of it. I was
Mhm.
kind of like, what am I doing with my life? And I made like a knee-jerk decision and I dropped out, much to the chagrin of my parents after a month because it
Yeah.
was a state school, but it was in a different state. So, needless to say, it wasn't as cheap as if I went to the University of Maine, which after I dropped out, I basically just worked some odd jobs for a little while. I was probably about 19 years old. And then I decided I'm going to give college another try. Another kind of dumb decision. So I went to the University of Maine the following year at about 20 years old. And I made it a little further at Maine. I made it about one semester. And again, it was just like I wasn't gelling. I had a assigned roommate, and my roommate snored really loud. He played Dragon Ball Z all day. He just was not my type of guy at all.
Yeah.
And so I like wasn't sleeping well, and I was kind of just like very, very lost and had no idea what the hell I wanted to do. So again, like any lost 20-year-old would do in that situation, I dropped out. And it was probably about 6 to 8 months later where I was just kind of back in my hometown, feeling really sorry for myself, not having any idea what I wanted to do. And, I would see like parents of some of my friends, they'd be like, "Hey, what are you up to?" And it would just like be painful to try and explain to them like
Yeah.
everything going on. And I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to do something different. And I've always been like very inclined to like do challenging things and hard stuff. I
Mhm.
don't really have, other than my grandfather who served in World War II, I don't have a big family history of military.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really anything that like pulled at me before probably about 6 to 8 months before I joined. But that was like when the internet was starting to be somewhat available.
Mhm.
And this is probably like the 2010 timeframe. And I started to read about like originally I was thinking about going to signing a Ranger contract, Army Ranger contract,
Yeah.
and went to talk to recruiters. Recruiters said that they don't have any Ranger contracts, but they have an 18 X-ray contract, which is again that SF contract.
Mhm.
And I didn't decide right then and there, but I went home and probably like for the next week straight, like nonstop, I just searched everything I possibly could about it. And obviously, a lot less about it was available on open
Yeah.
source back then. You didn't have like Reddit. forums, you didn't have any of that stuff. You didn't have YouTube channels. Like now there's a ton of YouTube channels you can learn from,
Hmm.
Instagram, like myself and all that kind of stuff. But it was enough to, there were some cool like YouTube video like promos about SF that looked awesome.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, that looks really cool. And I can have a chance to do that from civilian all the way to like actually go try out and go to selection. There
Hmm.
was a surviving the cut, like 2 weeks in hell video back then. I don't think it's available anymore, but basically selection used to be 2 weeks long and they had a Discovery Channel special like they do on Buds
Right.
uh, called 2 weeks in hell. And I watched that and it's just like, it pulled me towards it. I was like, I want to go do that. It looks absolutely miserable. It looks
Yep.
super challenging. Looks really hard, but I feel like that's what I need to do right now. So honestly, like my why was just to go like do something hard and prove to myself that I wasn't a complete degenerate that had a two-time college dropout and that wasn't going anywhere in life. So like that was the main reason that I did it. And also
Yeah.
because, it just looked cool. And I was very interested and I was very drawn to it. And kind of the rest was history. I went through and just kind of talked about what happened after that. So
Yeah. So going through selection, was there anything that came up that you're like, wow, this is really hard? Like, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done. Was there anything that stood out to you as like, "Dude, I should have done more training to prepare for this?"
so when I was that age, I was about 22 years old when I went through selection.
Hmm.
Basically, when I had finished high school, all the way till when I joined the army, so about 3 years, I was big into running. Like, I didn't do a ton of races or competitive running, but I just ran a lot. So and I'm just like more naturally genetically inclined to be a more of an endurance guy than a
Hmm.
strength or muscular guy. It takes me a lot of effort to gain any sort of muscle and strength.
Yeah.
And so I was suited really, really well for basically what I tell guys for selection. It's an endurance event with a strength component. It's a non-trivial strength component. Like it's a real thing. But if you have really good endurance and like decent strength, you're going to be way better off than if you're super strong and your endurance isn't great, if
Right.
that makes sense. So
Yeah.
if you're a little bit more inclined as an endurance athlete, you're usually going to do a little better. When I got there, it wasn't until the third week of SFAS, Special Forces Assessment Selection, is called Team Week.
Hmm.
And Team Week it's done after the first 2 weeks, which you're, basically week by week, day by day, it just gets incrementally harder. And by the time you hit that third week, you're already pretty smoked. And the third week is all you're doing stuff as a team. So you're like
Hmm.
building apparatuses, you're carrying things really long durations in like various different positions. You're doing low carries with like ammo cans and water cans. You're doing high carries. You're carrying apparatuses like on beams across your rucksack for miles and miles and miles, day after day
Yeah.
after day. And it pays to be a winner for sure.
Yeah.
You assign to a team, so you don't really get any say on which team you're on.
Hmm.
You're on a really strong team. Basically, when you're done for the day. And I would say when I got there, I realized like I probably should have done a little bit more like legit strength training and actually
Hmm.
built muscle and built some more overall strength. I had enough strength to be fine and not, I was one of the more standout guys on my team. But at the same time, like it would have been a whole lot easier. I wouldn't say easier, but it would have been less miserable
Right.
had I done some like traditional strength training. Because up until then, I was just mostly running and
Hmm.
just doing some like circuit training, doing a lot of calisthenics, but I wasn't doing like the big main lifts. I
Right.
did that in high school, but I had kind of stopped that for a few years. So I was just to give you an idea, I was 168 pounds when I went to selection, and I'm 6'1", and I
Okay.
was 6'1" then. I might be a little shorter now after 12 years in, but now I'm 195 pounds. So I was a good 27-ish pounds lighter and
Right.
about the same body fat. So it was mostly muscle
Hmm.
back when I went then. So I was a calisthenics monster. I was a running and rucking monster. But I definitely was not the strongest guy. And when I see online standards, I'll see stuff on Reddit where guys will be like, "Oh, you have to squat, bench, deadlift this, and this." I'm like, I'm pretty sure you don't because
Yeah.
I could not do any of that. I can now, but I couldn't do any of that when I went.
Right.
And I was totally fine. I was like one of the top candidates. So that would be definitely one of the things that it's one of the things I emphasize more with my guys, just depending on their strengths and weaknesses, whether they're
Hmm.
strong right now or not, is just building some good, solid full body strength. It doesn't really take anything special. It doesn't take any advanced exercises. You don't have to lift 5, 6 days a week. You don't have to follow a push pull leg split,
Hmm.
but at least, do a solid mix of all the movement patterns, squats, bench, deadlift. Not necessarily, you don't have to use a barbell, which is another thing that I get a lot of hate for is when I tell
Yeah.
guys they don't have to use a barbell for everything if it doesn't suit them well, which we can get
Hmm.
into if you want. But
Yeah.
that would be probably the biggest thing that I would go back on and emphasize a little bit more. And that's what I emphasize as well with my clients today. So
Yeah, we'll dig into that because we want to talk about the fitness and the hybrid fitness training that's, it's very prevalent now, and there's a lot of guys training and they have more information out there. And so we'll hit that in a minute. I want to go back to the mindset. So you're going through selection and you're seeing a lot of guys wash out, and then you go through other selections, you go through schools, you go through all of this, and you're ultimately training yourself to become a warrior, and you're leveling up, you're earning these skills, basically skill sets, so you can be the best operator. So when you face challenges going through any of these schools, what was your mindset going through that and facing a challenge? Did you enjoy the difficulty that you faced? And if you failed at anything, as I know I failed at stuff, what was your mindset on picking yourself back up and moving forward through that?
yeah, so honestly, and I know a lot of guys say this and it sounds kind of cliche, but like I do enjoy just being in the suck and really
Hmm.
getting just tossed through the ringer and seeing if
Yeah.
I can hang on. Obviously, you don't enjoy every single second of it. And I think anyone who says the thought of quitting never crosses their mind is kind of maybe full of shit. But at the same time, like it didn't cross my mind very often. And anytime I would even think or contemplate anything along the lines of quitting, I'd just be like, I can do it tomorrow.
Hmm.
I would either do that or I would say, I'm just going to make it to lunchtime. I'm going to make it to dinner time. I'm sure you guys probably do that at Buds, especially
Yeah.
like a week and stuff like that, just breaking things down. I like to use a land nav analogy. So, land navigation, basically, you get assigned a point, and that point could be several kilometers away. It could be, 6K away, or it could be 15K away. And the way it works at selection is you get 8 points and you have to find, you get 4 points on 2 different nights. So you have to find eight total. You don't necessarily have to find all of them, but that's the goal.
Hmm.
And a lot of guys are totally capable of passing land nav. They just psych themselves out because say they get their first point of the first day, and the first day starts at midnight, by the way. So it's pitch dark out.
Hmm.
If you're lucky enough, you get maybe a little bit of moonlight, but either way, if you get your first point and it's 14, 15K away and you have to walk through the woods navigating at nighttime and you think like I have to walk 15K, you're going to psych yourself out. Whereas a proper land nav technique is to break things down into checkpoints. And usually checkpoints are anything from 500 to 700 to 800 meters away. So instead of thinking I have to walk 14, 15K, hey, I have to make it to my next checkpoint.
Hmm.
It's 700 meters away. And then when I make it there, I'm going to make it to the next one and the next one and the next one. And I think breaking down, like kind of mentally breaking down any sort of hard thing like selection, just like that, I just have to make it to the next checkpoint
Yeah.
or whatever it is, the next meal. I have to make it till bedtime, whatever. I think is a lot less, it just makes it feel a lot less arduous and
Hmm.
overbearing. And you can break things down into smaller chunks and just get to that. And then once you get to that, that's when you worry about the next thing. So that was probably like my biggest strength was like, I kind of enjoyed it, but at the same
Hmm.
time, I also didn't enjoy every second, but I
Yeah.
would just tell myself I have to make it to the next one. I
Hmm.
didn't show up here to stop or quit. Like I showed up here
Right.
to make it and do the thing. So here I am. I'm
Yeah.
going to do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. Some guys, especially through any type of these military selection pipelines, they see the duration and they're like, wow, I don't know that I can handle this. Because right now, how I feel is extremely tired. I'm worn out. There's no way I can do this day after day for this many days. And that's the mindset is, yeah, creating those checkpoints in your mind. Like, only have to make it to this point, and then I'll have a rest, or I'll just reset. And
Yep.
then instead of the entirety of it, you just focus on the next task at hand and staying present in that moment. Because that's where a lot of guys, they check out. They're like, okay, I can't, this is unsustainable. There's no way I can do this. There's no way. and then looking at your brothers and thinking, man, they're going through the same thing I am. So I'm not in this alone. This is something that we're going through together, that we're all going through this. And this is something that's doable. A lot of guys think that this is impossible. It's not impossible. Your mindset's not in the right place. Maybe you're just thinking too far ahead. To stay
Right.
present, lock in the next checkpoint, and then treat it like a marathon, not that sprint, because a lot of people do that. They go hard and then it's like, okay, I burned out. And that's what makes them check out, because they're done too early on.
Yeah, I think one thing I always emphasize, and this can be done with your day-to-day life, and it probably should be done with your day-to-day life if you have any sort of goal like this, is to just get really used to delayed gratification and accepting
Hmm.
delayed gratification. Your accolades are not going to come for a very long time
Hmm.
in any of these processes. So if you are expecting to get a reward or congratulations or anything like that, a pat on the back, it's not going to happen for months, maybe years, whatever it may be. So
Hmm.
the same applies to life. And if you can practice that in life, like most important accomplishments, most fulfilling and satisfying accomplishments, they're not like, hey, I'm going to put 5 minutes of work in and I'm immediately going to get congratulated for it, or I'm going to get paid for it, or I'm going to get the reward for it. The problem is a lot of things in life these days are set up like that, like
Hmm.
scrolling Instagram. You get an immediate little dopamine hit from
Yeah.
no effort, and you get used to all these things that are just immediate gratification, and you get kind of comfortable with that instead of embracing the discomfort of the delayed gratification that's eventually going to happen. It
Hmm.
just may not even know when it's going to happen. It may be like an unknown thing. Usually with selection and training courses and all that kind of stuff, you know it's going to happen eventually. But if you're not accustomed to that and you haven't like implemented something like that into your lifestyle and really just gotten comfortable with doing the boring stuff or the hard stuff without immediate reward, it's going to be very difficult for you.
Yeah. It's your character. It's what type of person you are. And that's what we've seen too, is the guys that make it through are the ones that have the grit. They're the ones that are willing to do the mundane for days on end. It's not all the flashy stuff. And yeah, you're not going to get a pat on the back. You're not. Like, nobody's going to tell you, great job, man. You did good today. Like, just get used to not having any support. Just be okay with that. Be okay with being in the grind, in the darkness for a while. And the question I would have for you is, when guys are going through selection, and this is something that we work with the guys going through buds, visualizing, their why, yes, but also when you think about guys going through any type of military selection, do you think it's wise to think about being the operator, right? Because if you're just thinking about, I just need to make it to selection, and they're like, I just want to do something really hard, and you arrive at selection and you're going through the hard thing, but you don't have the vision for why you're going through it. Do you think that's an important thing to think about why you're doing it? Or do you think that that's thinking too far ahead? Like, what's your mindset with that?
I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you. I know, and you probably get this a lot too. I know on the way I would argue that to steel man that, I would say if you think too far ahead and you think that your main why is just to be the guy and to be the cool guy and to do the cool things and to be thought of as like a badass, that can be a little bit problematic because a lot of people are very interested in the idea of being special operators, but they are not interested in doing the actual things that are required to be special operators.
Right.
So that would be one example of when I would say probably a little bit, just put a little bit extra thought, be a little bit more calculated into what your why is. But at the same time, I 100% think that the day you make the decision to do whatever you're going to do, you should start acting like the person that does that thing.
Hmm.
Whether it's your, daily habits, whether it's your training, whether it is your whatever mindfulness, your preparation, your dedication to whatever you're doing at the moment, you
Hmm.
should start acting like a very high performer and not someone who, lies to themselves, presses snooze, or shows up late to things, or just can't commit to a little truth. It's something that they tell themselves that they're going to do in the future, but you just really can't. So you want to really ask the question, like, am I acting right now? Even if you're 6 months out from even going to basic training or whatever it may be, am I acting right now like someone who does the work that I want to do? Am I acting like that person? or am I just acting like a, immature kind of dopamine seeking, pleasure seeking, typical person of 2024? So I think a little bit of both, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
having kind of a little bit of both mindset would be a pretty smart thing.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I agree. I think it's important to have to visualize what you're going for and start acting like that, but also remain in the here and now. Because if you're only thinking in the future, you're seeing this massive gap between where you are right now and who you want to be in the future. And if you just see the gap, you're like, that is just massive. I could never make it through all of that. So we get bogged down in all the little stuff and we overwhelmed and all of that. So yeah, I think it is a little bit of both. And it takes what I've seen is it takes some maturity, it takes some inner reflection and a little bit of humility and say, set my ego aside. Why am I doing this? Like, am I doing this for the right reasons? And you don't necessarily have to have this written out reason, like exactly why you want to become an operator. Like, because a lot of stuff is internal. We just feel like
Yeah.
this is what we want to do. But being able to somewhat be able to think in our mind, like in our hearts, like why we want to do this and be able to have a good answer for ourselves at some point is important. Because if you can't ever think about that and all you think about is selection, I'm like, bro, you're not training to be in selection for the rest of your life. Like that is only a portion of that's the job interview, literally. Like that's what mostly what it is. You learn some skill sets in there, of course, but the selection pipeline, it's the job interview. So if you're just fixated on the job interview, but you never even thought about what it might be like, what type of person I want to be as an operator, like what that looks like, then you're just setting yourself up for failure because you're just visualizing this. I just want to do something hard. And like, bro, life's hard. Like life
Yeah.
is hard. There's a lot of hard things you can do. So
Yeah.
if
Go
you
run
can
an ultra marathon if you want.
exactly like there's stuff you could do that's not join the military. So figure out what job you want. There's so much information out there on figuring out if you want to be a SEAL, SF, whatever, Marines, PJ. There's so many different skill sets and specificities within special forces, like that's what you feel called to do. We'll dial it in, figure out what your job, what kind of is in alignment with who you are, and then you can visualize that. And then man, you train for the job interview so you can crush that darn thing. But I think some guys either they get fixated on the job interview or they get fixated on the actual job, and there's a disconnect.
Yeah. And I always tell guys too that if you think selection's the hard, at least in SF, probably with you guys too, if you think that's going to be the hardest part and then the rest is cake, you're badly mistaken because
Yeah.
things just get harder as you go.
Yeah.
Even when you show up to group, you're still going to feel like, okay, I made it. But if you start feeling like you made it a little bit too much, you start getting a little complacent, or you
Mm-hmm.
start feeling like you've arrived. Guess what? It's just going to get harder. You're going to be asked to do things that you don't have the resources for, and you just
Yeah.
have to figure it out and get the job done. So,
Yeah. So let's talk about that. When you're in the teams, when you're in your group, what were some highlights? Like, so, we talk about the selection pipeline. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, it sounds incredible. I want to go through this. I want something really hard. But let's talk about being the actual operator because that's why you would go through the crucible. That's why you're going to go through adversity, go through the selection pipeline is to become the operator. So in your mind, is it worth it? Is it worth going through all of that training to become an operator? Do you have maybe a snapshot of what it's like as an operator, maybe some good days and some things that you look back on with fond memories?
yeah, absolutely. I can't really think of anything specific, but just once you show up to a team, and they're called ODAs in SF, basically the same thing as a SEAL team, probably a
Mm-hmm.
little different structure, but you are with a group of very like-minded individuals with varying levels of experience. So you're with guys that have been doing this for a really long time. You're with
Mm-hmm.
other guys who maybe have been doing it for a couple of years, and then you're showing up as the new guy. So, as the new guy, obviously, you have to earn your keep and you have to prove your worth by, I always tell guys, be very, very fit because especially if you're an 18X and you have no prior service, you have no experience in the regular army. Really, the only thing you can bring to the table is being really fit and helping guys out with lots of things and asking questions and learning stuff, even though you're probably
Mm-hmm.
going to get told that your questions are dumb. They still need to be asked. Like, don't be the guy who shows up and talks the other guy's ears off, but also don't be the guy who shows up and just doesn't say a word.
Mm-hmm.
But to kind of get back to your question, the aspect that is, at least in my opinion, like the best part about being in any sort of unit like this in a small team is everybody's like-minded. Everyone has a goal to be the best that they can be, and as a kind of a cohesive team, be as good as they can be at a team as a team,
Hmm.
because the best teams get the best missions and they get the
Yeah.
best assignments, and there's really no arguing that. So treating every single day, whether it's a day where you're showing up in the morning, checking email, doing a workout, and going home, or you're showing up and going to the range from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., taking a 1 hour break, and then shooting at night till 3 o'clock the next morning. Treat all those days like you want to be there. And I thought that was a super cool aspect of it. Like just guys that really want to get after it and
Hmm.
train really hard and be part of something that is going to, like, even if you don't feel like you're making a difference, you are going to make a difference throughout
Hmm.
your career overall, like as a whole. Your team's going to make a difference, even if you're not deploying to combat a lot. I only had one combat deployment, but at the same time, we deployed and helped other nations out that we might need the help of someday. And it may not feel like you're doing all that much, but it is a very meaningful job. So I would say just the brotherhood and the cohesiveness of the team, and just not everyone's going to be best friends, not everyone's going to have the same exact interests, but everyone kind of has that same deep down, like, hey, we want to put our best foot forward and continue to grind and
Hmm.
prove our worth, and we want to figure things out, because I'm sure it's similar like to this in the SEALs, but there's a lot of times where you're given an assignment and you don't have the resources provided to you to complete that assignment in
Hmm.
a that exceeds the standards, and you still have to exceed the standards. So guess what? You have to figure it out. You have to build relationships with people. You have to ask questions. You have to maybe barter with some support personnel, and you have to think outside the box. I know that sounds really trite, but at the same time, like, you really do have to do that all the time. So
Yeah.
it's just as a very it's so different than any other profession that you could ever imagine. Everyone, like, people ask me what a typical day looks like, and I'm like, there is no
Yeah.
typical day. Every day is different.
Yeah.
Could be, jumping out of planes. It could be riding on Zodiacs. It could be shooting at the range, or it could be, like I said, just checking email and going home. And
Hmm.
that's the great thing about being in SOF is, usually, depending on who your leadership is, if there's nothing to do, we don't like fake like there's something to do and just
Yeah.
hang out there and waste time. We train to standard, not necessarily time.
Yeah.
So I think all those aspects are things that make it really awesome. And no matter what soft unit you decide to pursue, I totally think it's worth it. I've never spent any time in the regular Army or the standard military, but from people that I know who have, they always say a bad day in SF beats a good day in the regular Army. So
Yeah.
that would be kind of my sales pitch for it.
Yeah. Same thing that I've heard as well. So all my career in the Navy was in the SEAL teams, besides going through, Navy boot camp. And yeah, it is a completely different environment, different type of people. In fact, like going through selection weeds out those that just don't have the same character, doesn't have the same values. And there's something about that brotherhood, the community, I think makes it one of the hardest things about getting out is when you lose that, when you still have friends in the teams, you still have friends you talk to probably, but it's not the same when you leave and you have this camaraderie. You've gone through fire together. I mean, you've gone through all kinds of training, been on the team, you've seen each other at their best, their worst. And then when you check out, all that experience you had, all of the respect you gained, even the rank that you made in the military really comes to an end. And that is challenging for a lot of guys. And I know it's challenging for me. So let's transition a little bit. What was it like for you deciding to step away? I know you had your personal reasons and all that, but just as a warrior leaving that community and stepping back into civilian life, what was that like for you? And what's been the hardest thing for you so far?
Yeah. So very good question. I would say, because you are so used to going to work every day and hanging out with your boys, especially when you do something like you or I did and go be a solopreneur, and it's basically just you. It's me and my wife all day at the house, and love hanging out with my wife. Don't get me wrong. And I still see some of my buddies from time to time, but it's totally different Like my day-to-day life involves pretty much sitting where I am right now on my computer
Mhm.
and doing a couple workouts and maybe doing some other stuff that isn't computer involved, but for the most part, it really is. So that was a massive switch and a massive change. I would say one of the other difficult things that I experienced, especially when I first got out, I started Terminator training before I got out,
Mm.
but prior to getting out, all of my content was just general fitness advice. I wasn't coaching guys prepping for selection. I wasn't making any content about SF or selection or anything like that. Just general fitness advice, because that's kind of what I planned on doing until like my niche kind of just fell into my lap almost. And so trying to get over like the mental hurdle of putting myself out there as basically putting myself out there without also trying to use my former job as like the thing that hooks everyone or the thing that gets everybody to listen to
Mhm.
me. So like, hey, I'm a former Green Beret, listen to me. Putting your name out there and putting your neck out there and making content that you talk about your old job, but not in a way that's you're trying to like bring a bunch of attention to yourself, more of in a way that you are trying to help people. When you think about it, when you say it, it sounds very innocent, like no issues whatsoever. But every time I make a post, at least when I first started making posts, I would always have in the back of my mind, like, what are my former teammates gonna think about me? My teammates probably are. Actually, I know they do support me, but like,
Mhm.
what are guys that like know of me but don't know me going to think when I start talking about it? And maybe they don't realize my kind of intentions behind it. They think that
Mhm.
I'm kind of using my former job as a way to make money and get attention and get followers and stuff like that. So that was pretty tough. That's like one thing that I had to just be like, okay, I really have no option here. Like if I want
Mhm.
to do my own thing, if I want to help the next generation of SF guys go be successful, then I have to start not caring what every single person thinks. You're always going to have somebody probably that doesn't really like what you have to say. But if you're saying something and 500 people get something out of it and one or two people don't like it, coincidentally, those one or two people are probably going to comment on it. And because whatever they have going on in their life is not great, so they like to comment on strangers' posts.
Mhm.
If I can help all those people for maybe pissing off two or three people, then that's just something I'm gonna have to accept and be okay with. So I would say like that was pretty tough, just splitting up with the boys and not spending time in the team room with
Mhm.
the old teammates, and also just put my name out there and starting to be a little bit less self-conscious about what people think about me and just kind of going for it.
Yeah, that honestly, that's the hardest thing when you become like a public figure, right? When you start putting yourself out there, it's hammered into your head when you're in the teams, when you're in SOF, is you're quite professional. You don't talk about your job, you don't tell about what you do. Like you go home and you wear civilian clothes out in town, you don't wear a uniform out in town. You like everything you do is just under the radar. So the moment you step out and you're out of the service and you start sharing your experiences, that was for me as well. It still is challenging to put a post out there and mention something or have a picture of something that was from training. It's like, and yeah, you'll get the hate, and that happens. What I tell myself too is the same thing. When you have those that come up, those negative ones, it's like, yeah, well, I'm helping a lot of other people. And tell me this, if if you are if you have to tell me something that you're mad about, then that's probably on you. That's probably your ego and your pride coming on through that post to me. And so
100%.
I've just let go of that. And the other thing would be what I thought about a lot when I got out was, okay, say like you get out in 10 years and you did 10 years in some type of special forces or SEAL community, whatever it might be. When you get out, are you going to put anything on your resume? Are you going to put anything in your LinkedIn that says, hey, you were in the military and you served on this team or you did this or this in a generic form? You're probably going to put that on a resume. You're probably going to put that in your
Oh, you're
LinkedIn
going to.
profile, right? Because you're not going to say, for these last 10 years, I did nothing.
Yeah,
And you expect to get a job
right.
off of nothing. Like, no, you're going to put that on your resume. What's the difference of that? than me going on here and sharing about my experiences. It's the same thing. You're still sharing and you're putting it down. You're trying to get a job. I'm trying to help people. It's like, bro, you wouldn't leave that gap time out in your resume or on your LinkedIn profile. And it's all about, okay, how can I serve the most people? At the end of the day, I'm not trying to serve the guys who are already in. They're there. I'm trying to serve the past me, who I knew didn't know a thing about anything, who was weak, was lost, and who needed a lot of work. And if I can help some kids like that, and not just kids, but guys in general, like, I'm happy then. 'Cause I just want to help people. And I think that comes across too in the stuff that you put out, the work you do. It's ultimately you want to help people. And there's going to be, like, if we don't rock the boat, if people don't get angry, then we're probably not saying the right things, because there's got to be that hate out there and it's going to come. Right.
Yeah, and
So
honestly, man, like I've got empathy for, not that I haven't yet, like I probably will coming down the pipe, get some pushback from, like, SF guys or whatever. I haven't yet, but at the same time, like if someone wants to say something, I have a little bit of empathy. Like when I was in, I kind of looked at people who did sort of what I'm doing a little bit similarly. Like, hey, why is he putting his name out there? Why is he sticking his neck out there? We're supposed to be quiet professionals. But I think one thing that you don't realize until you get out is that you've got to do something, and nobody's just going to hand you anything. You have to either go apply for a job and get it, interview and get it, or you have to start your own thing or whatever you happen to want to do afterwards. But just because you're a former cool guy does not mean someone's going to just hand you something on a platter and be
right.
like, yeah, dude, please come work with us. We'll pay you whatever you want. Like, we're begging you. You have to, if you want to do your own thing, especially in this type of field, like you have to just kind of suck it up and put your name out there and
Yeah.
what you feel like saying. So,
Yeah. It's having that thick skin that you had in the teams, having that thick skin moving forward.
right.
And then I think if your intentions are in the right place, then people understand that and they'll feel that. And so let's transition further into the fitness realm. And I was reading your bio. I wanted to hear about why you were called Terminator. And was that from in the teams where you got that when you're with your boys, or was that pre-military where you were deadlifting and squatting these numbers that I read on your bio? So let me hear about the nickname.
Yeah, so great question. That was a somewhat recent nickname on my last team. For whatever reason, some of the guys on my team, just some of my mannerisms and some of the ways I conduct myself, like guys thought that I resembled more of a machine than a human. They started calling me Terminator, and it kind of just stuck. My entire team called me Terminator. And so when I started my business, my name's Kevin Smith, which is one of the most common generic names in existence. So I was trying to think of a business name and it just wouldn't come to me. And then finally, I'm pretty sure someone on my team, I can't remember who it was, recommended that I just call it Terminator Training or something like that. And I was like, genius. So there wasn't anything like one specific thing where people started calling me Terminator, but it was just kind of something that like molded from, I guess, my actions and the way I carry myself, and I'm kind of
Yep.
more of like a stoic individual. So that's
I
probably
love it.
a combination of what caused it.
Yeah. And I see a lot of stuff you put out on social media, and all the stuff you're putting out on social media, the fitness work, is stuff that you're training guys on and helping guys through. So you're walking the walk is what it is. There's a lot of fitness trainers out there who just talk a lot, but they're not actually getting the work in themselves. So let's jump right to fitness training. Let's talk about it. I know right now, big thing out there is talking about hybrid fitness. You can Google it. There's all kinds of stuff on social media about what is that hybrid fitness? What does it look like? And is there even a point in doing it? A lot of guys with the soft prep community is that, as well as, I need to be good at running, swimming, lifting, calisthenics, rope climbing. I mean, there's just a whole slew of different things, which turns into, okay, it looks like a hybrid fitness program. So let's jump right into that. If you have a candidate that wants to go Army, SF, or wants to go into Rangers, or wants to go into pararescue, whatever it might be, he's maybe 6 months to a year out, and they're talking to you about, I want to do hybrid fitness and I feel like I'm I'm just overwhelmed right now. What would you tell them?
Yeah, very common to feel overwhelmed. One of the basically the definition of hybrid training is when you build different fitness disciplines that don't necessarily support each other. So when you think hybrid training, think running and trying to get strong, or running and trying to get jacked,
Hmm.
or biking, whatever form of cardio. Running's usually a little bit tougher to do most at the same time, just because it's more impactful and beats you up a little bit more. But a lot of people think hybrid training is like I lift weights 5 days a week and then I do incline walk on the treadmill a couple times a week for cardio. Typically, the way I define it is you actually want to improve physically, not just get the health benefits of, but like actually improve your performance
Hmm.
in conflicting goals. So it's definitely a more popular thing now. A lot of people are putting hybrid trainee or hybrid coach or whatever in their bio. First started reading about it back in basically when I was pretty close to graduating the Q course. Because, like I said, I realized that I wasn't quite as strong as I wanted to be or as big as I wanted to be when I showed up to
Hmm.
group. You don't have to be crazy strong. You don't have to be jacked. Like that's just all looks. It doesn't really matter all that much as long as you can carry your weight. But I was a little bit lacking in strength and I was really good at endurance. So what I did and what a lot of people do, and I have to kind of coach them around it, is I kept my endurance training where it was at. And then I just threw a strength program on top of it.
Hmm.
And that's what I typically tell guys, like when you combine two programs that are meant to be followed 100%, you have a 200% program and you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to recover and make progress from that for very long, depending on who you are. But in most cases, you're not. So hybrid training, to do it right, you kind of have to trim the fat. You can't do a lot of like extra stuff that you can't do a lot of junk volume. You can't do a lot of junk miles running wise. You have to really have intent behind every single rep of every single session that you do, every single mile that you run,
Hmm.
or else it's just going to add to fatigue and it's going to detract overall because you're not going to be able to recover as well from your overall training, your overall workload, and you're probably just going to stay about the same at everything. In some cases, you might even get worse. And in many cases, especially when you're doing running as the cardio modality and rucking, you might get hurt. You might hurt yourself. So it's really about trimming it down. I like to call it lazy programming, even though your overall workload is high because you're doing a decent amount of lifting, a decent amount of conditioning. The amount of each one that you do would be more lazy programming. So you're trying to do the bare minimum of each to still make progress instead of trying to do as much as you can and seeing if you can hang
Yeah.
on for your life because that just doesn't go well. So if someone was six to 12 months out, usually what I do is get an idea of what their background looks like as well as where they're currently at.
Hmm.
Like I said, like me personally, I was a big endurance guy, so I probably should have done some more strength training before I went. Other guys, I would say most commonly, guys are more already decently strong. They've got a decent gym background, but they really struggle with conditioning, specifically running, just because running, you got to be kind of meticulous with it or else you're going to hurt yourself.
Hmm.
So I would get an idea of where their weaknesses are at and where their strengths are at. And then we kind of focus a little bit more on their weaknesses, maintain their strengths, say someone's like pretty damn strong, maybe they have a college football background or something like that, but they have never run more than 5K in their life. Well, we're going to have to work a lot out on building an aerobic base for a while and getting them used to not necessarily all running, because if you start someone who's like jacked and big and strong just running too much, they're probably going to hurt themselves because of the
Hmm.
impact. But
Yeah.
you can build a great aerobic base using other things besides running, as long as you do a little bit of running and then kind of as that aerobic base gets built, switch into some more actual speed work, training different energy systems, training the glycolytic energy system, doing some repeats and tempo work and whatnot to try and get their speed up. But that's after they have a really solid, good aerobic base and maintaining lifting. Like I said, don't need to completely, even if you're super strong, I don't think you have to completely shut anything out. It's important to lift. I mean, even professional runners who only care about running, they still lift.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I would approach it. There's a lot of different details and a lot of different nuances that go into it, but that would
Right.
be the way I would usually approach someone who is in that situation.
Yeah. So tell me this, if you have somebody you're working with, a trainee, and he's just pushing too hard, how do you, as a coach or a trainer, have somebody back off a little bit? And the opposite would be too, when you have somebody that you know needs to push harder, do you focus on motivation, structure? Like what's your take on holding somebody back or knowing when to push them. What's your mindset on that?
Yeah, I would say the first thing you mentioned, going too hard, is more common, at least in this population.
Yeah.
Guys think that more work, more exercise, and more hours spent training always equals more results. You
Hmm.
only benefit from the training that you can recover from, not the training that you do.
Hmm.
So if you're doing all this training just to do all this training, but you feel absolutely terrible all the time, your numbers aren't improving, you can't sleep well, your joints hurt, you start having weird appetite changes, mood changes, things like that. You just don't feel good other than like while you train, you can muster up the strength to get a training session in. That is a pretty good indication that you're doing too much. And
Hmm.
I typically and let when I program for guys, I write their program out. I give them their program. Basically, every 2 weeks, I update guys' programs, especially conditioning, just because it's more interchangeable. Like lifting, I
Hmm.
like to keep things the same for a while.
Yeah.
But I try to just discreetly make it feel like they're doing a lot. But at the same time, I know for a fact that it's not, usually in most cases, not too much. Obviously, we can adjust down the road.
Yeah.
I do get a lot of questions like, hey, can I do a little bit more of this? Hey, can I do a little bit more of that? Hey, do
Hmm.
you mind if I do a 5 mile time trial this weekend? Then
Yeah.
I have to get into a little bit of like, hey, listen, do you want to train just to train, or do you want to train and get results from it? Do you want to, or guys will be like, I finished the workout, but I didn't feel super smoked at the end. I didn't
Hmm.
feel like really sweaty, out of breath. And I asked them, is your goal to feel smoked, out of breath, and sweat as much as possible? Or is it to get the results that you want? Because there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, being out of breath, sweating, feeling tired is a byproduct of training. But, and I've made this mistake countless times, it should not be the goal. The goal
Hmm.
should be to give yourself a stimulus that you can then recover from and you get better and better over time. Maybe not in a linear, perfect weekly manner, but at least a little bit better down the road. Like you're making some sort of progress, you're trending up,
Hmm.
not you're just getting more tired and more fatigued all the time. So it can be
Yeah.
very tough because that type of training feels good. You get like this big cortisol
Oh
rush
yeah.
at the end and you feel great and you feel accomplished, but at the same time, it's typically in most cases totally fine to like go balls to the wall once in a while and
Hmm.
see where you're at. Like if you got a buddy in town, you guys want to do some crazy training session, whatever. But if you're making a habit out of that and doing it weekly, that's when you start running into not necessarily like overtraining syndrome, but you're just doing more than you need to do. And it is
Yeah.
not helping your progress.
Yeah. A lot of guys feel the mindset of a lot of influencers, if you will, on social media is that just go hard every day. Just,
No days off.
just never stop. Just go hard every single day. And then there's that the burnout happens. And there's a time and a place, especially when you're going through the actual selection, to just go all out. Like it's,
Right.
when you're there and you're doing a run that's timed, like you got to go and do your best and push yourself. But during training, like training is training, it's just like a pro athlete. They spend time training. They have coaches, they have mentors, they got people to help them out with their diet and nutrition, and they have everything is closely regimented so they can perform their best in training and build. And then there's game day. Game day is when you go to selection, whatever your selection is, like that is when you perform. And the mindset is, yeah, in training right now, if you're just destroying your body, well, that's not necessarily training yourself. You could potentially be injuring yourself or never recovering and getting that point where you're hitting plateaus, and that the overuse injuries happen a lot. So with the guys that you progress in running, what are some of the most common injuries that you see in guys that are training for selection?
Yeah. So usually lower leg injuries,
Hmm.
basically knee and below. So any sort of runner's knee type thing, patella tendonitis, whatever it may be. I would say most common is probably some sort of shin splint, whether it's inside or outside of the shin. And, the main reason for that is primarily, I mean, I would say a little bit of it is just lack of education and not knowing what appropriate volume increases week to week, appropriate intensity increases week to week are.
Right.
But a lot of it is just, I saw this guy, I saw this article and they said you have to run 35 miles a week and ruck 20 miles a week before you go to selection. And last week I ran 5 and I rucked 6. So this week I'm going to run 25 and I'm going to ruck 12.
Yeah.
And you just added like 300% volume to one week just because you saw this one article.
Yeah.
So I would say lower leg injuries for sure. And they can be mitigated for sure. I think a lot of people go about the mitigation of those things a little bit incorrectly, a little bit backwards. A lot of people will be like, oh, you got to do a bunch of tibialis raises. You got to do a bunch of calf raises. You have to work on your ankle mobility. You have to recover really well. None of those things are going to be a solution to just doing too much too fast, too
Hmm.
soon.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, or people will say, you have to work on your running form, do all these form drills. Yeah, running form is important. But again, if you have perfect running form and you double your volume in a week, you're still opening yourself up to a lot of, whether it's acute injuries or overuse injuries, it's still a very common thing. So just being more mindful and being appropriate with how much you increase, and yeah, taking things contextually, like eventually I'm going to be up to that mileage, but
Hmm.
I haven't even started yet. So why would I think that I need to put that mileage in next week? And
Yeah.
believe me, this is stuff that I used to do before I knew any better. So I am totally empathetic to people who do that, but
Hmm.
or sympathetic, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, there is enough information available. There's enough coaches available that you can honestly put together a solid plan for yourself. You'd be better off hiring someone who has been there, done that, and actually knows what they're doing. But at the same time, like with Chat GPT, Google, Reddit, whatever you may get your information from, podcasts, books, like you could probably put together a pretty solid program. But the thing is, you can have the perfect program, but if you don't stick to it, or if you jump the gun a little bit too soon, you're probably going to pay for it. So
Yeah. And then one of the things that I've seen with guys that have been training for a long time is they're looking for that secret program, that secret sauce, whatever it might be that nobody else is doing. And one of the things that they're inexperienced because they've been training for a long time, but they're still inexperienced in their training is that they think they need to be hitting PRs all the time. Because initially, when they start training, from the guys I've seen and been preparing for buds, is that they'll have PRs really quickly early on. Like they crush their 1.5 mile run. They got a new swim time. Like every single week, they're getting faster and faster and faster. And it's like, yeah, initially you started from way down here. And the first part of training could be the first year, you're going to see a lot of new records and new personal bests. And then once that grind starts, it's very rarely to see new numbers, like new scores. We start seeing the plateau happen. So when you're working with somebody and they hit the plateau and they've been training for maybe a year or more, what are some mindset things or fitness tools that you used to break past the plateaus that somebody who's experienced in training has already built through and gone through, and now they're at these plateaus? Where do you start?
yeah, so very, very common for people to have the mindset of, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but for whatever reason, everyone thinks that their body works on this perfect 7 day clock and that every single week, no matter what, you're supposed to be better than last week. And
Mhm.
the fitness industry does not help when they say progressive overload every time, add weight to the bar, add reps to the set. Yes, that is your goal in the long term, but that does not mean it has to happen every single week. And in fact, sometimes you might be worse the next week in your performance than you were the week prior. For example, if last week you ran a tempo run at like a 7:15 pace, and it's the next week you maybe did like a tough workout the day prior, maybe you didn't sleep great last night, maybe it's 20 degrees hotter this week. Guess what? If you don't beat your time last week, that doesn't mean you got worse. It
Right.
means there are some conditions going on in the environment as well as your body that are they're kind of hiding your fitness. Basically,
Mhm.
fatigue is like masking your fitness a little bit. And just because you have to go a little bit slower that week doesn't mean you got worse. Eventually, yes, of course, you want to trend upward and make progress over time. But you're right. As the more advanced you get, the more you've been doing the same thing for a long time, the harder it is to continue to make those tangible and measurable gains. And
Mhm.
what I have to remind guys all the time is that, if you're knocking 5 seconds off of your tempo run pace over 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you're doing really well, especially if you've been doing it for a while. It's just like lifting. Like if you've been lifting for a long time, like a professional bodybuilder, if a pro bodybuilder gained 2 pounds of muscle over one entire year, he'd be ecstatic.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're new and you have decent genetics, you're probably going to gain 20 pounds of muscle in the first year of lifting.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like or like a runner, if a runner's got a high level runner has a mile PR of 402 and they run a 401.5, they're going to be absolutely ecstatic. Whereas someone who's newer to running, maybe their fastest mile is 9 minute mile, and they might knock a minute off or 2 minutes off in like 6 to 8 weeks. So it's kind of like it just doesn't scale perfectly, is I guess what
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to. But usually for plateaus, I am a big fan of kind of doing reactive deloads. I don't necessarily plan deloads out. If things are
Mhm.
going, in my opinion, the way I approach it, if things are going great in training, even if it's been a certain arbitrary amount of weeks, I like to ride that wave. Hey, you continue to make progress. You keep feeling good. Everything's going on. Everything that's going on in your life is going well. There's no signs that we're overdoing it, and you keep getting better. Why would we? I don't want to deload there. So I would probably, break the, unwritten fitness rules of, every
Yeah.
6 to 8 weeks, maybe 10 weeks, you do a deload. I
Hmm.
usually like to just base it on guys' week to week performance, as well as how they're feeling, as well as their schedule, their life stress, things like that. So I'll throw in, I don't necessarily always do like this perfect deload where it's a full week of like reduced volume or reduced intensity or both. Usually it's like, hey, guess what? Next 4 days, don't train at all. Don't even think
Hmm.
about training. Go to the beach, hang out, chill out. And usually they come back feeling not only physically better, but also mentally like more engaged and
Yeah.
ready to crush another block or another phase. And
Hmm.
oftentimes, if someone's been hitting a plateau with their speed work or whatever, a lift, you take a few days off where you're just trying not to think about training and you eat a bunch of food, get a bunch of sleep. Even if guys go and like, drink their face off, believe it or not, sometimes that is enough to take some time off, give your body a chance to recover, give that fatigue a chance to go away. While you don't lose fitness in 4 days. So your fitness is going to stay high. You lose fatigue a lot faster and
Yeah.
you feel great. Other times, we're not overdoing it. Just you hit plateaus and you just may need a little bit. You may need another day of, say you hit a running plateau, you might need to add a day of running, or you might have to add a little bit of speed work, or you might have to add a little bit of slow running, lifting, maybe a frequency thing. Instead of hitting a muscle group twice a week, maybe you hit it three
Hmm.
times a week and just kind of drop some volume off from something else that's already strong. So lots of different
Yeah.
options, but I always have to remind guys, A, you're not going to get better every single week. Stop expecting.
Hmm.
Your body's not on this
Yeah.
perfect 7 day clock. And B, it's okay to hit plateaus. It's totally normal. Doesn't mean you're getting worse. We're going to continue to bust through this
Yeah.
plateau. It's going to happen. So
Yeah. Like, oh no, my program's not working. This week I didn't hit a new PR on my screening test or whatever. Like, bro, no. That just because you didn't beat your last time doesn't mean you're going backwards in training. And it's perspective too. And I think that's why you have somebody on board as a coach or trainer or a mentor to give you that perspective. Because if you don't know, you're just going to drive yourself into the ground potentially. And I
yeah,
know I did when I was training. I got all the injuries. I didn't do everything right. I just did a shit ton of volume and
right.
hoped and prayed that that was enough. And there were things I missed out on and I didn't do. And I should have done more strength training. I did all the endurance stuff, which I think, honestly, for the any of the soft pipelines selection is you have to have the endurance foundation. You should have that as the foundation. However, the strength piece is very important for
Right.
these as well. But yeah, the perspective of having a coach and a mentor is huge. So let's talk about that right now. You are a trainer and a coach, Terminator Training, right? So tell me a little bit about what you do and how you help guys in
Yeah.
training.
Yeah. So my main business, I would say, is helping people prepare for special forces assessment and selection. I've got a few other clients that are preparing for other various selections, but that is probably my bread and butter is just getting guys prepared to, take on the arduous task of selection.
Hmm.
So I mostly do one-on-one coaching. I also have a group fitness, basically a program on Train Heroic, a training team that is just more of a general tactical athlete maintenance program. It's not like preparing for selection or anything like that. You could follow it like before you start your like specific selection prep, but that doesn't take a lot of my time or energy. Most of my work is with guys who are prepping for selection.
Hmm.
So depending on when guys hire me, I've got guys who haven't joined the Army yet and are looking to go in as 18 X-rays. I've got guys in the National Guard. SF has two National Guard groups. So I've got guys doing that who are looking to go to selection soon. I also have some guys in active duty regular Army who are looking to go to selection at some point. And guys will hire me anywhere from like 3 months out. I actually had one guy that I coached the last 3 months. He got selected yesterday. So he literally hired me almost exactly 3 months before his selection date. And I'm like, okay, let's go. We gotta get after it. But other guys will hire me, a year plus out, and we'll,
Mhm.
spend all that time, building a solid base, getting comfortable with the things that they're not great at, or the things that they consider their weakness, or I consider their weakness. So,
Mhm.
and then I have a few clients that are just regular people that want to get fit, and I really enjoy coaching them because my true passion is like hypertrophy training, like lifting to gain muscle.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a component of that in soft prep. It's not like the main thing. Like I'm not
Mhm.
super worried about like the little nuances and stuff like that. So it kind of keeps me on my toes a little bit. It keeps my skills up when I coach quote unquote regular people who just want to be
Mhm.
more perfect. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. And then I have, a podcast. I've got Instagram. I write articles. I've got a bunch of articles on my website. I just started doing articles on Substack as well. So I dabble in a lot of things, probably a little bit too
Mhm.
much. I might have to dial that back down a little bit at some point and just figure out which one I'm best at. But for now, it's really enjoyable and rewarding. So
Yeah, I understand the rewarding part. So, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years in the fitness space, mentoring, coaching space? Is this something you see yourself digging in deeper on, helping more people? Have you thought about events? Like, where's your mindset with looking into the future for growth?
yeah, I definitely see myself doing something very similar to what I'm doing now. I don't really have any intentions of venturing off too much. I would like to be able to help more people. Probably the next thing I'm going to look to do is to do something similar that I do with my one-on-one clients, but I'm also considering doing, this is my wife's idea actually. Basically, I'll have an application for a certain selection class. Like, hey, if you're going to selection, basically they run them every month, other
Hmm.
than a couple summer months just because of the heat and the month between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So they do 9 per year.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about having just a group coaching thing for, hey, you 6 guys are all going to this next selection class. So you're going to be part of my group coaching thing. It's going to be, a little lower ticket. It's going to be a little bit less like one-on-one time, but I'll still do
Hmm.
group calls, and I'll still actually personalize their programs and stuff like that. So I would say in the next 6 months or so, that's probably going to be like my goal. 5 years down the road, I would say, man, that's honestly, this may sound lame, but I don't really think that far out. I
I
know
get
it's
you.
important. I know it's important to have really long goals, but I personally don't haven't sat down and thought about it. So I would say something quite similar. I'd like my podcast to kind of take off. I actually want to have more guests on my podcast. That's one of the other things that I would like to do, including yourself. And that's probably like the upcoming thing in regards to content that I'm probably going to change a little bit and adjust. Most of my episodes are just me talking to the camera for an
Hmm.
hour plus, which is great, but it's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say didn't answer your
It's
question. That's
all
that's
good.
pretty much what it's looking like.
Yeah, I love it, man. And so, last thing I want to touch on here, you have support from your wife, which is awesome. So, how has she felt with you leaving the military and being an entrepreneur? How has that been? I know you guys work from home. My wife and I both work from home. The dynamic is, we're both very busy and we get to see each other. But how has that been getting out of the military and that spending time together and all that as this part of your life?
Yeah, I'm sure you can relate. It's a crazy change going from,
Yep.
you're gone well over half the year
Yep.
and you're always the one leaving, and she's keeping things stable on the home front. I mean, you got kids. We don't have any kids. We just got dogs, so it's a little bit easier. But at the same time, like once I got out, yeah, we see each other several times every single day. Her office is like literally
Yeah.
right across the hall from me.
Yeah.
We both are pretty focused throughout the day on like our own things, but we always make time to go for a walk every morning with the dogs. Basically,
Hmm.
she'll go to the gym early, come back, and we'll go for a walk. Usually, we hang out a little bit during lunchtime, and then for the most part, in most cases, I like to have like a hard cutoff time for work at the end of the day, unless something crazy is going on. Usually my brain kind of doesn't really work anymore after 5,
Yeah.
5:30 p.m. So that's
Yeah.
when I kind of cut it off. And then after that, we eat dinner together or we go out on a date night. We go out at least once a week.
Hmm.
And it's just nice always having the opportunity to be together and not having to leave all the time. Once in a while, she'll go away on business for a couple days, which is kind of weird. I'm the stay-at-home dad when she does that, which is totally
Yeah.
different than what we're used to. But
Yeah.
we've got some good trips coming up here soon. I'm going up to Maine to visit family next month, and then we're going to visit her family the following month out in California. So
Oh, cool.
it's great, man. It's definitely very different, and we've had to learn a little bit, like put some rules and regulations on like, hey, you can't just come interrupt me whenever you want. Here's some certain times that like we're gonna make the effort to actually hang out. So it's great, man, overall.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I gotta lock my door here because the kids come running in. They're
Yeah.
out. Like I'll be on a call or podcast or something, and it's like, okay, well, this is what life is right now, and you just have to embrace it. And there's a craziness of life in the military, and there's a craziness of life after the military, and it's enjoying where you are when you're in it, and not trying to like live in your glory days of the past. And that's been a big lesson learned for me too. Is like, dude, these are some awesome times where we get to help a lot of people, get to do a lot of cool things and I love what you're doing, man. I love hearing your story. You have a lot of experience and just the wealth of knowledge that you have from the podcast, social media, and the programs you have. I know it's helping a lot of guys. So I appreciate you jumping on today, brother. So thanks again. And I wanted to ask you, where can people find you if they want to come learn more about you?
Yeah, so I have best place to find me is Instagram, Terminator_training is my Instagram handle. I've also got a podcast, The Terminator Training Show. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can check that out if you're interested. I talk mostly about SF stuff. I obviously am not an expert on SEAL training or anything like that, so I keep it mostly in the Army side. But I also talk about other fitness domains and stuff like that. And I also started to put my episodes on YouTube. My YouTube channel is very vanilla. It's a couple podcast episodes and a bunch of exercise demos for some of my programs. So if you're expecting like a YouTube superstar, that's not me. But then I have a website, Terminatortraining.com, and you can hop on there, see programs. I've got articles on there and a little bit more information on everything. Also got a coaching application on there. So
Very cool. All right. Well, yeah, a lot of great places people can find you. And I was reading the articles you got on there. Fantastic, fantastic work. And
thanks,
let's
man.
connect again further in the future. It's been an honor having you on. Thank you for your service and thank you for your continued support for guys that want to become better and become that next level of man and warrior. So keep doing what you're doing, brother. It's looks like you're doing some great work out there. It's been an honor
Appreciate
having
it.
you on, man. I appreciate it, man.
Uh,
All
Later.
right, brother. Take care.